Okay, cool. I'm going to turn on my camera just to say hello at the start here. Thanks everyone for joining. Again, my name is Barnaby Richards. I'm the practice director here in North America for data intelligence, analytics, data warehousing, that sorts of things. I am here in almost snowy Colorado, surprisingly. There's a lot of content that I want to cover today. I'm going to go relatively quickly. If you have a question or you want me to stop and clarify something, feel free to put it in the chat. William will be monitoring, and I will be too, and it'll alert me to kind of pause and give a little more background. But at the end, we'll also pause for a little bit of questions, assuming we have some time. But as always, if you need to get in touch afterwards with any follow-up questions, we'd be happy to have a one-on-one session to clarify anything I'm going to cover today. So with that, here's basically what I'd like to cover today. 5 main points. So the first being the analytics kind of evolution from SAP. I'll do a little bit more background on SAC itself. I do have a bit of a video demo that I might share, but I may also, in the interest of time, send that out as a follow-up to the participants today, just because I'm not sure we're going to have enough time to really get into a deep demo. The fourth point here, making the move. So how can you make this shift? How can you start to integrate SAC into your business objects environment? And more importantly, how can we help you? What are some accelerators that NIMBL provides that would allow you to make that transition from your business objects environment into SAC or a hybrid BI environment? Okay, so with that, everybody's seen a curve that looks like this before. You start on the left here with what we call descriptive analytics, and moving to the right, you see you've got your dashboards and scorecards, and you get more into your data visualization and self-service analytics, and then up towards your predictive and operational optimization. So this is really your Industry 4.0 stuff. SAP, along with the industry in general, has moved up this curve relatively quickly. We see a lot of people that are sort of stuck at this level, that are doing mostly ad hoc reports and standard reporting, maybe dabbling a little bit in the dashboard and scorecarding side, but having difficulty to really break out of this descriptive analytics bubble into more of the self-service and agile visualization. What SAC really brings, and what the power of bringing your business object environment together with SAC, is the ability to move up this curve more quickly and to give your users both what they want in standard and ad hoc reporting, but also unlock the possibilities to move up this curve more quickly. So SAC really is providing, SAP, I should say, is really providing the best of both worlds with this two-tier kind of strategy that they have in place today. So the first being business objects. I'll start down here. So if you prefer an on-premise solution, it is the most scalable enterprise reporting solution according to SAP. It does have a collection of tools that are very feature rich and very mature, especially with 4.2 and now 4.3 release. We've seen a lot of the kinks that 4.0 had years ago been resolved, and a lot of value being driven from a business objects BI suite. With SAC, really you get the benefits of a cloud SaaS solution. You get all of the strategic investment from SAP being put into this platform. So if you're moving to S4, C4, Concur, other SAP cloud-based applications, you're going to start to see SAC more and more, and I'll talk about that a little more in a bit. As I said, heavy strategic area of investment, but most importantly, it gives you the ability to do not just analytics, but planning, prediction, and to build applications in one place, which is something that really differentiates itself from other products. These two complementing each other can really lead to a lot of benefit to most enterprises. So let's do a little quick feature compare. There are certainly some features for which the BOBJ BI suite, especially when you start talking about Crystal and Webby, have, which SAC doesn't yet have. But as you'll see, over time, the feature parity is really getting much tighter, and there's only a couple areas where there's really a distinction. The biggest is probably in highly formatted reporting. If you're doing a lot of broadcast Crystal reports, or even broadcast Webby reports with a lot of specific formatting in them, that is something that SAC is gaining on, but certainly there's a gap there. So if we do find customers that are quite happy with their Crystal investments and are going to continue with it, along with Webby. But if you're using Webby for typical reporting scenarios or ad hoc analytical scenarios, most, if not all of those can be met by SAC today. The important pieces, obviously I mentioned before that the BOBJ BI suite does not have, really are around planning, augmented analytics, and app integration. So if you're moving towards S4, C4, Concur, other products, you'll see much more traction on the SAC side. Okay, so it's important just to ground everybody that the BOBJ BI suite is not going anywhere. It's going to remain in support through 2027 at least, with the release of 4.3. We expect many enterprises to continue to leverage business objects for what it does well, but for most companies to start to understand that SAC is something that they have to incorporate into that environment and talk about, not necessarily a big shift, greenfield migration, but a gradual migration to more of a hybrid analytical scenario where business objects and SAC work together. So what is SAC? I've mentioned before, analytics, prediction, planning, apps. It is a single web-based solution for analytics. It was out of the gate probably slightly behind some competitors like Tableau, for example, or Qlik, but over time in the past year or two, has really caught up significantly and is now leading in the market in terms of its capabilities when you look at the full suite of possibilities, the planning, the prediction, the application development, all in one place. You can see here in this simple example, you have a planning scenario, which is feeding into an analytical scenario, which is feeding into a predictive scenario, and feeding back again. So we've had lots of success here at NIMBL with a lot of our clients who perhaps started with planning, and now they recognize, oh, there's a predictive scenario that we could use, get some value from with that same data. Or they started with analytics and they said, hey, there's a planning scenario that might complement this well. The benefit of SAC really being that you can do that all in one suite with one set of data without having to get, an Anaplan for planning and a Qlik for reporting and another tool for prediction. Doing it all in one place really lowers that TCO of your overall architectural investments. Another point that's important to note when we're dealing with this remote work environment that we're currently in for most of us is SAC's ability to be collaborative, right? Some of what you've seen in business objects in the past, it works fine, but it still requires a lot of email back and forth and communication outside the platform. What you get from any of the modern cloud-based analytical tools is really the ability to comment, collaborate on the same data sets, but also for everybody to look at the same real-time data sets. Also, the elasticity of a cloud-based system allows for you to scale up and down the number of users that you might need if, for example, you have a big boom of sales due to some unforeseen event that might occur. Obviously, it's cloud-based, and obviously, it's secure. In terms of planning, I'll just touch on these really quick, but SAC is really the tool, SAP Cloud for planning. It's the same software application. It's the same tenant, but there is a separate license. So you can buy an SAC license for analytics, and on top of that, you could add your planning license. What the planning license allows you to do is run planning scenarios on data that's been loaded into SAC and really fill a gap that you may have been filling previously with BPC. What SAC can't do is consolidations. So there's still in an S4 space group reporting, which would provide that functionality. But if you are a customer who's not yet doing anything in terms of tool-based planning, SAC is a very easy way to get started and to take your users out of sending Excel spreadsheets back and forth and having to manually disaggregate forecasts or plans through your data. You get this private versioning, what if simulations, you can incorporate the predictive forecasting, like I said, and the collaboration and cell commentary, like I said, but workflow, task assignment, reporting, all of that in one place. So it's a very, very powerful tool. Augmented analytics is really the umbrella term that SAP would use to refer to all of the machine learning and AI capabilities that SAC brings. So on the left here, you've got smart discovery, So this is the ability for the tool itself to find what are the main business drivers behind some of your KPIs. Smart Insights, which kind of follows up to that. So want to know more about your revenue and retail sector? Smart Insights will automatically discover what those insights are and say, hey, here's the outlier. So it doesn't really require you to run a big report, which people might have traditionally done, sort all the data, find the top customer, then pivot it, and spend the 30, 40 minutes that users may spend doing that today. You can really gain that value directly in the tool itself. And then finally, on the right side here, natural language processing. So the ability to ask questions of the tool, for example, you see here, show me gross margin for product by location. So you don't have to build a report for that or build a story for that. As long as your data is modeled effectively and your KPIs and measures are named effectively, you can simply query the data through natural language, which is a very powerful capability. Finally, there's Analytics Designer. So this is really the ability to build custom applications using SAC. You may have seen this capability with other tools, but really the power here is if you've got SAC, if you've got data that's being read live by SAC, either from a source like S4 or from a sidecar database like HANA or from Data Warehouse Cloud, you can build a custom application which you could either embed in something else, embed in S4, embed in a custom web app you may have, and really drive custom visualizations, as you can see here, this little airplane visualization, as well as the ability to interact directly. So you can have data actions that say, hey, print this, hey, share this with somebody, hey, take me back to the source transaction and tell me what happened here. Very powerful capability, and the API and the capabilities of this Analytics Designer grow and grow and grow every day. Mobile is clearly something that people want more and more. It was initially only supported with an iOS device from SAC, but more recently they've developed a Android-based application as well. Most stories that we develop are responsive, meaning the page will redraw itself according to the device being used. So if you're on a small device, you can see the two charts are above each other. Whereas if you're on a larger device, you might see a more side-by-side layout of your charts. So this ability, it used to be 10 years ago, a cool new thing to be able to report on mobile devices. Today, a lot of our clients and business people expect that, hey, I built this here, I'm at home or I'm on the road. I just assume I can open it on my phone without having to ask IT to redevelop something. The last piece that is very important, and I'm going to spend a minute or two on this one, is Excel integration. Many people, SAP especially, but many enterprises have assumed that an Excel-based reporting mechanism is old-fashioned, should be replaced by a more modern web-based tool, right? That is the promise. That's often the sort of smoke and mirrors demonstration that you may see. The reality that we all live every day, and I've been in many of your shoes many times before in my past lives, is people still want this data in Excel. They still want to get their hands on it. They still want to do their slice and dice of that data in what's familiar to them. And for many people, what's familiar and comfortable to them is Excel. The good thing with SAC is it comes with an Analysis for Office license. So if you're currently using Business Objects and your primary avenue for exposure of reporting data is Analysis for Office, you could make the switch to SAC without losing that Analysis for Office ability. Any source of data that you have exposed in SAC, you can connect to from Analysis for Office. So that version of Analysis for Office is the same version that you would get with a Business Objects license. The only difference being you need SAC, number one, and you're obviously consuming an SAC license when you use it. So if you're logging into Analysis for Office, you're now logging in via SAC, and that's, if you're on a concurrent license, is consuming a concurrent license. There are 2, if not 3 or 4 versions of tools, though, that allow for this ad hoc analysis. One of which is the version I'm showing here, the SAP Analysis for Office. That's what this is, right? It's your traditional tool. The other is called SAP Analytics Cloud add-in for Microsoft Office. Terrible name, but really what that is a web-based plugin for Excel for Office 365. It was released about a year ago, I think in May, and it's okay, but it's still got many feature gaps that the traditional Analysis for Office has, and I think it's playing a bit of catch up. But for businesses who don't have an Excel deployment and they only have an Office 365 version of Excel, that's a great option. The other two at the bottom here, Explorer and Data Analyzer. Explorer is the exact same tool that Business Objects delivered 10 years ago. It's been ported into SAC and kind of redeveloped, and its capabilities expanded upon, but the crux of it is the same. If a user wants to explore the data in more detail, Explorer is your tool. Data Analyzer, I have a slide on here. So Data Analyzer is the web-based version, the pure SAC native version of a pivot table tool. So it allows you to drag and drop fields in or out and to kind of build your own report on the fly. It's very similar to Analysis for Office, but purely within SAC. You don't need any Microsoft licensing to use this tool. Okay. Digital Boardroom was one of the sort of flagship mentions that SAP would love to tout in terms of SAC. It's still there, it still exists. What has been clear and announced by SAP is the investments in Digital Boardroom are going to start to kind of flatten out. So they see it as something that's got its market penetration. They're not going to be investing much more in it. But if you have a need for a 3-screen room that has interactive panels that can interact with each other, Digital Boardroom is a great option, and we've had a couple great successes with our clients delivering this to kind of win the hearts and minds at the executive level and the power of SAC. Okay, so let me just cover a couple of these points again between the options of tools that you've got, right? If you are an SAP customer, SAP Analytics Cloud stories allow you to do complex data visualizations. The disadvantage being you have to establish those connections, but analytics specialists tasked with summarizing revenue, it's a great tool. SAC stories are very, very valuable. If you get into analytics design or application design, this is really where you want a highly customized application for your business needs. Analysis for Office, I mentioned before, if the users want to do that transactional ad hoc analysis in a familiar spreadsheet, great. It's difficult to make impactful visualizations. It's also a little harder to collaborate once you're in Excel. S4 pre-built embedded analytics, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but this option is really where a user is living in S4, right? They don't want to leave S4, and the KPI tiles and the analytics capabilities that S4 comes with may be sufficient. In later releases, especially of S4 HANA Cloud, but also now S4 on-prem with 2020, you can actually start to embed all of the capabilities that you see up here in option 1 with SAC stories into S4 and other applications itself. And then last, Webby. So if you want scheduled broadcasts, customized reporting, if you have a lot of investment in this area, it may be difficult to replace them all, but Webby certainly has a place still for many companies. I'm going rather quickly, I recognize that. If there's any questions, please put them in the chat. This presentation will certainly be shared afterwards if anybody needs to spend a little more time to digest any of these slides. Okay, so a couple key investment areas that I just want to highlight from SAP. So the lower left here, enterprise reporting. So a lot of the reason why people would be hesitant to move to SAC is because they have those kind of formatted broadcast reports that, although may not be the most glamorous way of consuming your analytics, are still deeply entrenched in the enterprise. You will see more and more investment in this area as SAP ensures that that gap is closed. And if you really wanted to, then you could make a complete shift into SAC. The second one I'll like to highlight is this embedding of SAC into SAP core applications, more and more that is done. You'll see it out there. If you're an SAP shop and you're invested with different SAP applications, you're going to see SAC regardless of whether or not you are a business objects shop or not. And then, I've mentioned this several times already, but hybrid scenarios. So this ability to kind of integrate your existing investments with business objects along with these cloud investments will grow for the next probably year or so as people start to phase out that business object investment and move purely into SAC as their application front end tool. Couple more areas I want to highlight. So predictive scenarios off of live data. So originally, some of those augmented analytical scenarios that I mentioned before were only available for data that had been imported or loaded into SAC. So if you're a BW customer or a S4 customer, or you had a HANA sidecar data warehouse, it was more difficult for you to really unlock all of those powerful features of SAC. But SAP recognizes that. It was about a year ago when, before all of this COVID lockdown happened, when I was in Half Moon Bay, California, meeting with the SAP product team, and this topic really came up, that customers were saying, hey, we bought this, we thought we were gonna get all these cool features, but now you're saying that some of those aren't available for the type of data that we are reporting on. So those lines are gonna be erased very soon here, and you're gonna see the ability for any data, live data, BW data, HANA data, data warehouse cloud data, S4 data, to leverage all of the features. And then last down here, you heard me mention before, the 365 add-in. So that's really the web-based tool for Office integration for SAC. So if you need the ability to slice and dice there. And that tool was, like I said, released about a year ago. And at this point, it's fairly stable, but it's still a bit feature light when compared to the full version of Analysis for Office. Okay, so I mentioned enterprise reporting before. These are some of the features that will be coming into SAC over time. This is the best lab preview screenshots that I could locate, and I realize they may be a little bit hard to see. But what you can see out of here is that there's reports with repeating headers, with multiple elements on a page that are printable, that are exportable as PDF. Many people need that. We had a big project here at NIMBL for a customer, and one of the things we like to do when we deploy SAC is ensure that we are capturing good usage statistics. And one of the benefits of SAC is you can see the session times that people are spending in the system, as well as what they're doing. But one of the things that people could be doing is exporting the data, right? The last thing you want as a BI professional or expert is to deploy a big system, to roll out a new technology, and then the first thing people do is just export the data out because they need to have it in a CSV file so they can create a formatted report like the ones shown here. So giving people the ability to do that in the tool is important, even if it's just for 5%, 10% of your user base. Without that, you're going to lose them, and the data is going to start going off reservation, so to speak, and into, in some cases, shadow IT systems. Data wrangling is a big piece. So you may or may not be aware of Data Warehouse Cloud as a tool that SAP has recently pushed a lot strategically towards. That's really a play against Snowflake or other cloud-based data warehouses. It allows you to bring data in and do things. Bring two sets of data, model them together, et cetera. In SAC, more and more of those capabilities are also becoming apparent. So the ability to bring two sets of data in and join them together and create a sort of star schema that you can see here visually, but also to create calculations directly in your models, more and more what they're called data wrangling language. So the ability to actually write kind of SQLite against your data in SAC. So SAC is not a data warehouse. It's not going to be a data warehouse anytime soon, but this sort of ability to wrangle your data a little bit is going to become more and more prevalent as SAP invests in this area more and more. I've mentioned several times this idea of embedded SAC. This is just a slide that highlights kind of the current state of affairs for some of the flagship products. So you've got SuccessFactors with its embedded SAC, Fieldglass with its embedded SAC, Ariba with its embedded SAC, C4 Marketing Cloud, and again, embedded SAC, C4 Sales Cloud, and most importantly, S4 HANA Cloud in this slide, but also S4 HANA On-Prem with 2020 comes with that ability to really embed an SAC tenant into your system. What do I mean when I say embedding? I mean, yes, you could always have done this thing where you are in your C4 system and you click a link and it takes you out to an SAP Analytics Cloud system where you can have your stories and dashboards. But really the ability to keep the user in the system so they don't have to go anywhere, they're not going to a different system, their bookmarks, their collaboration, their sharing, but also their interaction with transactional data is much tighter when you're doing it in the system itself. S4 has its own embedded capabilities, but they were relatively simplistic. You had KPI tiles and you had the ability to build a kind of a pivot table-like scenario with a chart and a table underneath. But a lot of the powerful features of SAC, especially the different visualization types, weren't there. So now they are, that's great. And really the question for many companies is, do I need to just have this SAC system, or do I need a separate SAC system? And a lot of that depends on your own circumstances. Okay, continuing along. So hybrid BI, what's the concept here? I kind of touched on it at the beginning of this talk a little bit. This idea that you could have a system that is cloud-based up here in your SAC system, as well as your business object system in the background that you're connecting to and from. So your data doesn't actually leave your network and go to the cloud. You're really just overlaying SAC's visualization and ad hoc analytical capabilities on top of data that you already have in business objects, either in a universe, or I'll talk about a little bit more in now with 4.3 in a Webby report itself. The benefit here is that any of the semantics that you built into your universes, any of your models that exist in your database, you don't have to redo that. You don't have to redeploy a system. You don't have to go and reconnect everything and say, oh, now I got to create all my KPIs and semantics again. You can just take SAC, put it on top, and get all the benefits of SAC with very little extra investment. You can see here, this just mentions again that with the new Web Intelligence data model, you're able to leverage not just the universes, which was the sort of primary business objects connection option in the past, but the Webby reports themselves. So many customers have universe-based semantics, but also report and Webby-based semantics, and leveraging that and exposing that to SAC can be pretty powerful. And it makes you seem like a hero as an IT professional when you say, hey, I put this super modern new data visualization web-based reporting tool out there, and really all you had to do is buy a license and make the connection between the two systems. This is where a demo exists. I mentioned at the beginning of the talk that I would probably skip this, and I will, but there's an embedded video here which really explains how the connection between a business object system and an SAC system works and what it would look like. So from your BI Launchpad, you would see an application at the bottom, or even document links here directly to SAC stories. So a user could live in their familiar BI Launchpad, but then link in and out to SAC. You can see it down here at the bottom. When we share this presentation, we'll be sure to share a copy of this video so you can see what that really looks like in a real world environment. Okay, so how do you do it? So this is interesting. Yeah, great, Barnaby. You've explained SAC to me. You've explained why it's everywhere now, and I'm an SAP shop, and I should probably be more aware of how I should use SAC going forward. How do I do it? What's the commercial implications, and what does the project look like to get me from A to B, or to get me from A to Z if I want to go all the way there? So the first thing to note, again, I reminded you before, we are here now, right? This 4.3 was released earlier in 2020, and we're now into Q2 of 2021. So you've already seen the first support pack for 4.3, and it's mature and stable. I've had lots of conversations with customers wanting to do a business objects upgrade, because they might be on 4.1 and they're running out of time to do that, and they're looking to go to 4.2. My strong recommendation, NIMBL's strong recommendation, is to make the move to 4.3 already now, because it does unlock that ability to connect your web sources directly to SAC. And the UI of 4.3 looks a lot more like the UI of a modern Fiori SAP system. So the kind of learning curve for a user is much smaller as you start to adapt into this hybrid environment. SAP has a new license that allows you to downsize your business objects platform to just keep Webby if that's what you want. As you've seen Explorer and Dashboard Support go away, they've reduced the cost of these two on the right, but they've also introduced this new license that says, hey, you just want to keep your Webby alive? Great, do that. Reduce your maintenance base for business objects and take some of that savings and leverage it to invest more in SAC. So you can reduce both the license quantity and the functionality. So you can say, I only want Webby, but I also want less Webby. And SAP will let you take that extension through what they call their cloud extension policy. Use some of that maintenance savings to invest with any cloud tool, but in this case, we're talking about SAC. This conversation may require a conversation with your AE from SAP, but also we'd be happy to facilitate it if you want a little more understanding of what this means. You know, if you're comparing to SAP, basically the point here is you can reduce from what is your existing business objects enterprise professional to a Webby only, and then add on SAC. So your net is here. Whereas if you were to say, hey, I want to add Power BI or I want to add Tableau, you're going to be adding a more significant maintenance cost. Okay, so how do we, NIMBL, help you get this done? So we have some methodologies, some services that can help you understand the best way to introduce SAC to your environment. It can be a small and gradual exposure to SAC, like we see in some of our customers, or it can be a bigger investment where you say, you know what, we're going to keep business obviously around just for these smaller use cases, and we're going to start to move as SAC as our primary. What I would say, having done this for many years and with many of our customers, is there's a lot of customers out there who buy SAC because SAP, you know, gave them a sweet deal, or they had it packaged under a larger bundle. And then the deployment of it becomes a little lackluster. They dabble, they throw a few dashboards out there, there's a few users using it, and everybody's a bit confused about what is SAC, when should I use it? What is Webby, when should I use it? What is Crystal, when should I use it? It's important to have a strategy and to have a roadmap in place for yourselves that you stick to that says, we're gonna roll this out like this, but we're also gonna roll it out to different departments and at different levels of the organization at once. So like I said before, we're gonna have executive rollout, we're gonna have end user analyst rollout at the same time, so that this doesn't become a tool that gets pigeonholed as the thing that the executives use or the thing that that one department uses. So a couple things that we like to look at. So the first, I was just discussing analytics strategy. So what is your enterprise strategy alignment? What architecture will you need to put this in place? And using what we call our Edge Plus methodology, let's profile your users and determine, does SAC have all the features that they're going to need? Are they willing to change, willing to adapt to a new way of doing their jobs? Or are they very entrenched in the existing process that we as IT will have a hard time changing? You know, gradually perhaps, but not with a big, you know, Band-Aid tear off. So what does that look like in our Edge Plus methodology? We have a strong methodology. It is required, as I said before. You've got to understand what people are trying to do before you go and do it. If you just say, hey, here's a hammer, go find some nails, and everyone's like, I've got a bunch of screws here, it doesn't help them. And that's often the case. I've seen many times in my time in industry where tools were purchased and just became shelfware or became data extraction tools rather than really data analytical and empowering tools for the business. We look at three main pieces when we do this, our methodology, which is the business objectives here on the left. What are they trying to do? What are their strategies? Where do they want to go? Not just now, but in the future. User personas, so how do you segment your user from an analyst to a power user to just a consumer to an executive? What are the different features that each of those personas are going to require in a tool? And then processes and assets. So what are the business processes that these analytical capabilities are going to help support? And what are the digital assets, the KPIs, the tools, the reports, the data models that they're going to need to do those things? So all of these classifications together help empower you to say, all right, I understand what I'm doing. I've got a map. Let's go do that, rather than just trying to jump in and say, hey, I got the tool. Let's go figure out the problem later. The second is an SAC pilot. So how can we do a pilot deployment of SAC so that you understand as a business where it can work with your existing architecture? So these should be numbered 1, 2, and 3. I apologize for the bullet there. But the first one is an SAC pilot. So standalone. You just want SAC. You don't necessarily have or need the ability to connect to an existing BW or HANA system. You just want to create a system, provision it, and test it out. This could or could not be one that's connected to a business object environment, but it's really just about, together with that strategy, saying, all right, we understand our personas, we understand the business, let's dip our toe into the waters with SAC. We have a free trial, like we are able to provide a tenant to customers so they can do this SAC pilot themselves. The second is one with HANA. So let's say you have some data that's currently sitting in an Oracle or a SQL Server database, and you're moving towards SAP, and you'd like to understand how this tool together with HANA could really benefit you. You've heard the stories or you've read some successes from other companies and you want to understand it. This is an easy way, and you may have seen stories of our deployments of SAC with HANA for example, the 49ers or other enterprises that are leveraging the power of HANA together with SAC to have real-time data streaming into their HANA system that they can then easily visualize. It's a little bit bigger of a project, but you get a lot more value from it if your strategy may involve HANA or Data Warehouse Cloud in the future. The last one is for BW. Many of our customers are BW based. There's still a lot of value in BW, either BW 7.5 or BW for HANA. Similar story to what I mentioned. This would involve us building the necessary data sources packages to bring the data in, but also to expose that data to SAC so you can really see end to end. Maybe you're an S4 customer, S4 plus BW4 plus SAC is really the story that brings all of your data and analytics together. The last piece that we like to offer that is very valuable to some customers who maybe purchased SAC and they already have an architecture in place, but they're struggling really to get the wheels churning in terms of capability deployment internally. So we have a teach you to fish kind of approach here where we don't want to be the people that have to build every single story and report for an enterprise. We don't want a company to be dependent on an SI like ourselves, but rather to empower you so that you can do it yourselves, both you and IT or business people if that's your role. So what that looks like is really building out specific lecture content that drives specific to your business needs, what and how SAC can and should be used by your company, and then you see here on the right hands-on exercises to really deliver what is the latest in terms of features. There's certainly a lot of content available, SAC content, training, YouTube videos, that kind of thing. But we see a lot more value in having these tailored sessions where questions can be asked and answered directly by the instructor in real time. Okay, so that's the end of my content. I managed to get through it relatively quickly. I spoke relatively fast. We have about 10 minutes remaining here. I don't know, William, if there's been any questions or if anyone wants to ask questions now. As I said, if there aren't, or if you'd like to follow up, you're welcome to do that afterwards if now isn't the best time for you.
Hi, Barnaby, it's William, and we do have a couple questions. Are you able to hear me? Can you confirm?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, great. So our first question was from Philip, and he asked, can you elaborate a bit on what the difference between the universe connector for SAC is versus the new Webby source?
Yeah, so like I said before, in the past, SAC was able to connect directly to Business Objects Universes, and that was useful when you had a big business object investment and you wanted to expose that to SAC. But where the gap lied then was that many enterprises had a lot more logic, calculations, and semantics happening directly in the Webby report, and that was lost. So you'd basically have to connect your SAC to Business Objects and then recreate those calculations and logic again in SAC, and there may be the potential for them to be out of sync or different. Now with the Webby connection, you can really just leverage all of the semantics calculations that you built in Business Objects and make sure that any changes there are seen both in SAC and Business Objects. I hope that answered your question.
All right, great. And we have two more questions. The second one coming from Stephen. And he asked, can SAC still allow for email broadcasts of reports?
Yes, it can. That's one of the areas that there's, I would say, a slight gap between Business Objects Enterprise, BI Suite, and SAC. You can broadcast reports. There's a limitation to how many people you can broadcast to and how many reports you can broadcast based on your license. So for example, if you have 5 user licenses, you can send 1 report every hour, I think. If you have 10, you can send 3 per hour. There is now a schedule, a visual scheduler, like a calendar, where you can plan which reports are going to be broadcast at which times to help accommodate that. The other alternative would be to broadcast reports to distribution lists and then have those distribution lists send them out to a wider audience. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was on mute. There is one more question, and it's from Tara. And her question is, what is the best option of existing Webby users if we make the move to SAC?
So a couple things. The first is making the move to SAC should be done in conjunction with some form of strategy or alignment on what you're trying to achieve with SAC. But let's assume that that there is a demand for it, that the capabilities SAC brings are very beneficial to your enterprise. The first step would be to get a trial system and to connect that trial system to your business object environment, and then for that business objects content to be exposed by SAC, and probably to pick a couple key business units that are good sponsors of this kind of capability, and to ensure that what they're getting from the tool is adding value to them, it's performing, and the features and functions of the tool are the ones that they want.
Okay, great. That does it for our questions. Barnaby, you have any last thoughts to add?
No, I mean, well, maybe. I guess the parting words would be, as I said, you're not going to be able to avoid SAC if you're an SAP customer. You're going to see it in your S4 environment over time. It's probably worth getting yourself familiar with the tool, both as a standalone, as I've talked about today, as well as a hybrid connected to a business object environment. But importantly, to talk about what your future looks like, what your business needs are, and where do you see your path going over the next couple of years as business objects features and functions start to kind of stagnate a little bit and SAC really takes over most of that functionality. So we'd be happy to follow up with you if you need to. Here's our website. You can contact us here. I believe we'll be following up with most of you if we can with this content. If anybody needs that content, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to share the video I mentioned, but also to do a demo with you, have somebody on my team do a demo for you guys and better understand your needs. But thank you for attending.
All right, and like Barnaby said, thank you everybody for attending. This concludes our webinar. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.